I would like to, first of all, to thank the Hacking the Box people for organizing such a nice and very well organized conference and for inviting us. You will have a lot of troubles during this presentation, to follow this presentation, because I am known to be the one when he is speaking continuously moving like that. And actually I saw a movie at the 2 years ago DEF CON conference. I was speaking and continuously moving like this, and the cameraman had a hell of time try to follow me. So if you have any problem, you can shoot me. Just take out the gun and shoot. And he can talk for hours on the same slide. So my job here will be to pull the jacket from time to time, saying, "Hey, time," because we have actually a lot of slides to talk about. What we will see today, we will see how internet it is today. Probably you didn't realize exactly what it is internet today, even if you think it is a known topic. What it will be internet tomorrow, thanks. And how actually terrorism is using actively internet. What we will not talk about, what we are usually seeing on the news, like cyber terrorists are threatening to shut down the nuclear power plant in Ohio, for example. This is bullshit, because it's not like www.powerplantnuclear@ohio.com/admin, in which you do some SQL injection, then you get access to the administration panel, in which you have on, off, and shut down and melt down the core. It will be not like that. Anyway, I am the founder of zonage.org. He is a guy which knows a lot about terrorist stuff, intelligence, because actually he is an advisor for security and governmental issues, and he is actually very well known to be one of the experts of unconventional technologies. The first time I heard about parametric interception, I heard it from him. Many years before, I heard it from other people. We are actually quite good friends. He never talked with me in a presentation. I never talked with him. I hope it will work out this time. Anyway, it works. Why Zonage? Zonage is actually known mistakenly as a defacement archive. It's not only that. People are telling me, why do you take archive of defacement, such a stupid activity? And that's the problem. That's the error. Defacement itself, it is a stupid activity, but we should see what's behind. Defacement of a website, it's happening exactly there, in this architecture. If you think very well, nothing in the internet is more complicated than a web server. In order to have a web server running, you must have all those modules up and connected. If you come out now with an example of a more complicated application of a web server connected to the internet, I really appreciate it, because I don't recall anything more complicated than a web server application. Through each of these modules, the attacker can get in. Then they decide to deface. This is a decision of the person. I will deface the web page. Fuck the politician, blah, 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 blah. But this is a decision. You got in somehow from one of these points. And the trend, defacement trend, it's raising and raising. This is the trend since 2002, when we started to take information about web intrusions. And we will see the graph stops more than 1 year ago. I did this graph for the DEF CON conference in Las Vegas 2 editions ago. But below you can see that in 2004, more than 35,000 web intrusions per month, compared to the 1,600 we had 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's really a dramatically and sharp increase. This is to tell you that the trend is getting worse and worse and worse. Now, why are you talking about defacement and web servers and terrorism? In order to understand it, I want you to see this picture. The small cloud, it is what it is Internet today. Maybe you didn't know, but Internet today it is made up by only 40 millions of servers. Only 40 millions of servers. China itself, when it will be fully developed, will have double amount of such web servers. We are doing conferences, hacker meeting, security talks. There is a big industry behind for only 40 millions of servers. How many mobile phones are today in the world? 1 billion. What you have to know, it doesn't work. Can you switch? Okay. What you have to know it is that each telephone will be a server. Because as we learned yesterday from Emmanuel's speech about third generation mobile phone threats, each mobile phone in the future will have its own IP address. It will be connected to the internet. It will be an extension of the internet. Therefore, data communication, voice communication will be connected, will be the same thing. The internet will be done by what we know today, 40 millions of servers, plus all the mobile phones, when all the mobile phones will adopt any third or fourth generation protocol. Now, it's easy to understand that when you're doing, when you're planning an attack, when you're doing something, you use the phone, you are using the emails. That's why terrorism, internet, voice communication, data interception are going to be very much connected. The authorities in the future will have to face a big challenge. How to track down the people, the bad people, from such a wide and complicated system. Too many nodes, voice over IP, pure voice, but everything channeled through the internet. And this is actually what we're going to talk about today. How the internet will be exploited if we're talking about telephones. Well, yesterday we learned that on the protocol level, we have already several vulnerabilities can be used to attack. The telco network itself, we got some nice examples yesterday, is weak and can be exploited. Operating system, yes, your telephone will mount an operating system. Actually, my telephone already has an operating system, which is Microsoft Windows CE for the telephone, Pocket PC Telephone Edition 2003. Doesn't matter, it will not be Windows, it will be Symbian. Both of them, they contain vulnerabilities. But what I'm afraid mostly it is that the telephone will be vulnerable through the user application. People will mount stuff on the telephone without knowing what the hell they're mounting. We are security people here, we are security oriented, and we probably pay attention to what we are mounting on our systems, but most of the people, they will not. Therefore, they will be attackable, and if terrorists, probably they will be traceable. We can take advantage. And last, the SIM or the USIM card for the third generation will be used to even run application and process application, and also this is an exploitable point. Now, terrorism. I would like to explain you what I mean by terrorism. We will use terrorism as a general word, because a terrorist for him might be a holy fighter for somebody else, or a dissident, a political dissident for a third person. Depending on from which point you are watching this person, you might define in a different way. So when I talk about terrorism, it is generally speaking, without specifically pointing at anybody. Now, internet will exploit even better the concept of asymmetric warfare. And actually, this is the point where Fabio actually should come in and start to talk about.
Hi. So, actually, this is pure definitions we're going to talk about right now. So, all the people that are not familiar with the definitions, they can get a little bit familiar and understand what comes further on. We are talking about asymmetric warfare, and these are just definitions. Okay, you can just memorize them, and then we go to the next slide. Okay. These are other definitions. They are taken from books, so they are standard. You can just look at them and memorize them. And now I can tell you that ICT warfare, which is the next slide. Okay. Okay. So now I can start to explain, so I don't get the effect that he was talking about before. So on the 12th of October 2001, there was a big meeting called, I don't know if everybody of you is familiar with the G8. That's the reunion of all the 8 more industrialized countries, right? So there are different sessions of the G8. One of these is called G8 Security. On the 12th of October 2001, there was the G8 Security in Rome, and I was called upon to present just because there was a non-event that just happened 1 month before, and for other reasons like that. There was, they asked me to present an outline of a system that could help justice and, I don't know, national security to identify threats which they manifest physically. You have bombs and everything else, but they necessitate organization before. This organization takes advantage of the technology, the existing technology, which means that people need to communicate. They need to communicate in a wide environment. So you have cells of, for example, terrorists or freedom fighters or whatever. That they communicate across the world, and they take advantage of the existing technology. This technology is cellular phones, is internet, and everything he was talking about before. And I think you know about that. So this system was, or the presentation that I made at that time was entitled Asymmetric Warfare in a Multidimensional Environment. Okay, and the title actually was a little bit different, but I don't remember it exactly. But that was the meaning anyway. So a multidimensional asymmetric warfare, it meant that you could attack or utilize the existing technology or whatever advantage the existing technology could give to hit strategic targets in not only military targets. You could hit a nation state or an enemy, whatever the enemy was, in various levels or various dimensions, which are military, for example, economic, social, and anything you could find, like, for example, I don't know, the banking system, the energy system, whatever, critical infrastructures, they are a target. So the most effective way to hit these targets is through the international information and communication technology systems, which means taking advantage of the existing network, which was built actually to communicate and to widespread information to actually do some damage. Okay, so just to give a little bit of background also, if we go to the next slide, I borrowed these pictures from a magazine. I don't remember what magazine, but they are actually quite explanatory. You have talking about the conflict, right? You have the mechanical war, which was soldiers that go on and the tanks and the shooting, and the one shoots to the other one, people die and everything else. And this is the standard war. Then you have systemic war. That's the war that only I think the United States can fight, because it's the one that requires a lot of money and a lot of technology. You have a bomb that hits the window of the bathroom of that person, says, okay, but I want the bomb to explode and kill just the person. I don't know if I can do that, but if you have the money, you can pay. They can do that. There was a nice picture that he showed me one time, where there was this American soldier, you know, with all this equipment, very expensive equipment, bombs, everything. You pointed to an Iraqi guy, very thin, you know, to be an Iraqi guy, the American soldier. And he was there, and he had some sand in the hand, and he threw it in the eyes of the American soldier. And he said, that's not fair. You're using unconventional weapons. And that's a dirty war, okay? So not because he used dirt to throw in the eyes, but that's what is generally known as terrorism. But as he was saying before, that all depends from the point of view. You know, you had during the Second World War in Italy, for example, we had a big resistance movement against the Germans. So for the Germans, they were terrorists. For us, they were freedom fighters. Who knows? And then it depends from the numbers. You know, if you have 3 guys that are fighting for freedom and there are 50 million people in the country, you know, those are terrorists. If there are 49 million people fighting for freedom and 2 guys, you know, which are holding the country, they are freedom fighters. Depends from the point of view. So that's why he said, you know, that thing before. So the dirty war is can be combated by a country, a nation state, or people that don't have economic or any other mean to fight for whatever they believe for. Then you have the peace war. There was a Cold War, you know, people looking and say, hi, how's it going? Then that's the knife in the back here. And then you have the ICT war, which is what we're going to be talking about, because looking at the future, that is where the next wars are going to be combated, because that type of war can be fought by anybody, okay, the rich countries and the poor ones. It doesn't matter, because you just require a computer and a connection. The connections are going to be everywhere. In a few years, as he was saying, they're going to be also in your hand or in your pocket, because in your fridge, you know, in your microwave and everything. So if you go to the next slide. So this is just, you know, explanation, so when you get the slides afterwards, you remember what I was talking about. So you have high technology, low technology, and that's Italian because I translated it very quickly. Next slide. Okay, there was a book a few years back from 2 Chinese colonels. I actually don't remember the names, but they are very famous, which was called Unrestricted Warfare. I think everybody on the underground has read it or heard about it, and all the conspiracies, you know, there are these sessions of people talking about conspiracies, theories, and everything. They were talking about it. Actually, it contained a lot of things which are pretty real and looking forward in the future. You can see that, you know, all the unrestricted warfare capabilities of anybody, you know, any nation state or any organization, and you have the targets. Okay, economy, public service, infrastructure, military, doesn't matter what the target is, just you need to do some damage. And the ICT war is actually a multiplier of these things. You can combat a war, and through ICT systems, through combating a war using also ICT systems, you can multiply the effects of everything else. Next slide. Okay, so during the G8 of 12 October of 2001, this is what was called for. They asked for something, something to implement to actually protect and to national security, national security, and to combat an asymmetric warfare with the same weapons that an enemy could use. Okay, and actually to be able to detect this type of attacks. Because with all the technology we have, we don't have the ability to detect things, to actually sense them. We have intrusion detectors, firewalls and everything, but they are not actually able to, they were built for something else. So what we decided to do was to implement a sensoring technology, which was going to be distributed, okay, ideally through the whole network of few nation states, and these sensors should be controlled by a central point, and all the sensors should have a own, let's say, intelligence, okay? So they could react or act also autonomously in case of emergency. Just think about, just a second, no, it's okay, but just think about your human body, okay? You have a human body. If you didn't have the ability to sense things, people touch you and you don't feel anything, or, you have a lighter here and they burn your hand. If you don't feel anything, your hand is going to be burnt. And then you just have one sense, for example, sight. One day you just look, shit, my hand is burning, and you don't have your arm anymore. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to patch it. So I'm going to cut my arm and put the arm of Roberto on. It doesn't fit very well, but, because it's totally different. So it's going to be, patched, but not very well. And that's the only thing I'm going to be able to do if...
As long as you're talking about arms, I have no problem.
I'm not going to patch anything else.
Italians.
Anyway, so the sensor, actual ability to sense things, to feel them, to have a sensor array, is something which is natural, which is also, we know it, we use it every day. We use senses also in not, I don't remember the word in English anyway, at the same time. Okay, so that's, and decode these signals and decide if it is a threat or if it is not. If something we don't know, we decide it is a threat after we have felt the effect of this. Okay, so that was what this type of sensor network must have the ability to do. What do we need? We need technology to do that. So it was started a big project to build sensors, actually actual machines that could do this type of work. So we had hardware, a lot of hardware, control room, and then a software that could govern this hardware and send the communication to a central point, and could allow these sensors to act in an autonomous way in case they were attacked, for example, singularly. And they could learn, and they could also send, for example, messages to the central point and to the sensor array to say, look, we had this threat, we had this attack, prepare, and maybe isolate the problem. I don't say if this is already implemented or not. I can say it's very well forward as a project. Okay. So this is what this type of network can be able to do. For example, it can do also intelligence, because once you have deployed a system like that, you can actually do almost anything. Okay. The only limits you have depend on the laws of the state you are operating, or the agreed upon laws of the cluster of nation states that in which this sensor network operates. There is, you need to understand one thing, for example, which we're going to also talk about when we go to the parametric interception part of it. There was a lot of legends on, echelon, which has, keywords. And, I remember in 1985, I was in Denmark, and somebody told me at the time, look, if you talk in a public phone and you say the word, I don't know, murder or things like that, after 5 minutes a police car is going to come by. Well, I did it. I talked and said, blah, 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 murder. And then I wait in a bar there, and after 10 minutes a car passed by. I still don't know if it was just a car passing by or anything, but actually it's psychosomatic. You said, shit, they are monitoring me. But then if you think about it, just think about it. You say, but how, 1985, you didn't have, you had still floppies, 5-inch floppies, and how many people would be there listening to all the conversations of the public phone saying, he said murder, send the car. And then I was in Denmark. I said it in English. In Denmark you should speak in Danish. I don't know Danish. I couldn't say murder in Danish. So, there are all these things, you're being monitored, people are listening to you, pay attention, but think about the technology involved. I saw one time in a website a whole list of keywords of echelon, say if you say these keywords or you type them, they are listening, they are going to intercept you and everything, but all you guys that are all technological wizards, think about what's the effort involved in memorizing, listening, looking over at all the communications. I mean, you need an army of 100 million of people doing that. And then, all these people are going to be, after the 100th communication you read, you're going to say, well, okay, bombs, okay, you know. And so you get two planes, hitting the Twin Towers. That's a good demonstration that there was nobody listening at that time, right? So, because somebody must have organized it, throughout the years. And so that's the thing. There is actually one country, which of course I'm not going to mention, but it's a small country, because you can only do this in small countries, which memorizes all the communications. They cannot listen to them in real time, but they post-process it. They open the zip files, and if they have password, they run the cracking routine and all these kind of things, etc. It's a small country. It's constantly in a state of war. It's using technology which is also being used for fraud management systems. So you know that, and they are selling this technology through a company based in the UK to other countries which might, have a threat for them. And this fraud management system is based on the same technology, and so they are linked. So if somebody comes from to you and says, "Look, I have a nice fraud management system. I give it almost for free," so you need to think about maybe they are going to be using it also for other purposes. And so then the next slide. So what I was saying before, these are all the dimension of the conflict and of the protection level we need. Okay. Just this is also borrowed from some kind of magazine. It's a standard national critical infrastructure. Next slide. Okay. So data interception. When we first started talking about data interception, and not data interception like email, because at the beginning it was being done, with a little machine memorizing all the emails. And then somebody was taking the hard disk out and reading all the emails, But then somebody thought, maybe the person is also clicking, navigating, using webmail. Maybe he's chatting. There are a lot of things that one can do to communicate over the internet. And then there is another thing. If you know the person, you can maybe intercept him directly. Say I intercept him, but the person, if you know the username, for example. But maybe I have 7 usernames and 7 providers. How do I know all of them? Maybe I don't know the person that wrote a certain document. For example, in the year 2000, there was one of the first cases I was involved in to create this type of array, which was prior to the G8 that I was talking about before. There was a bomb exploded, and prior to that there was an homicide, a political homicide done in Europe. Not talking about countries and everything. And the document that explained why this homicide was done was sent through the internet to a lot of media, newspapers, and everything. When talking to the judge and to the police officers, of course, we thought that maybe they have prepared it a long time ago, this document. Maybe they exchanged it between them, to say, what do you think about this sentence? Maybe I want it in a different way. And they say, yes, I'm going to write this thing in this way and everything. So they exchanged it, amongst the people. And then somebody went and killed the person, okay? Which is not maybe the person that wrote the document, but linked, of course. But the only thing we had was a document. A person dead, a bomb, and a document. So what to do to investigate? You need to look at the document. You only have that one. You can equalize that document to a parameter, that identifies a certain person or a cluster of people, like a picture, And the picture is a parameter, for example. A name and a surname is a parameter. A phone number is a parameter. So you have a document. This document must have some peculiarities. So we started doing experiments on that. And there was no legal procedure, to support this type of investigation, because, all the homicides at that time were being person killed, a phone call, I killed it. And I said, why? Because it was bad, because it was from another political party, I don't know, whatever, There you had a 15-page document, and you had to study it, know, and try to understand, and try to find something which was peculiar to these people. And you say, okay, once I found it, what do I do? they exchange it through the internet. Yes, but what do? I need to find people that talk in this way. Okay. And so, just a second, I'm lost. Talking too much. Okay. So, no, I'm not lost. So we started to hypothesize to do parametric interception, and we needed the technology to do it. Okay. So next slide. Keep going. Go. Okay. So this is a basic architecture for a parametric interception. Okay. So you have the probes, you have a mediation server, you have the backbone, you have then the probe is going to capture, based on the parameter. At the beginning, it was just capturing one packet, the one containing that parameter, which was going to just point you out to the IP address of a person. Okay, so you had an IP address, but you had to be quick enough to go there and check out what is this IP address, and then go and look for somebody. At the other hand, a lot of time it was too late, or you could find, for example, after this document came out, a lot of journalists talking about the document, and so you had a bunch of journalists checking out all these journalists. So it was decided that the parametric interception is good, but not, for example, in this way. If you intercept sex, for example, you can find half of the world, maybe 90% of the world. If there are a lot of things which are too general, the parameter needs to be the incognito of an equation, like it could be the parameter is the known thing, then the incognito is the name of the person. So you need to find who the person is, and it must be very precise, or most precise as possible. So in the ideal parametric interception, you don't intercept anything, you don't get anything for a long time. Then the one time you get something, you go there, and almost for sure you get what you want. So just go to the next slide. Thank you. Well, okay, was finishing. Okay, next one. It's a long one. Next one. Okay. So this is what we were talking about right now, the real cases. Then I'm going to explore them also later. But I want to go really to the next slide. Okay. So we decided to do another thing, which is we called it digimetric, just to separate it. What's the difference? The parametric interception is an interception that was studied to find a person. Okay, this one is studied to find a machine. So we found out from the header of the email that sent, for example, that document saying, we killed that guy because he was bad. Found that, you see that line, mailer? It is actually a real one. Okay, the rest of the header is fake, but that is a real one. So why did I put it? Because you see, this person, that line just tells you a lot about the person. It tells that it's some person that likes he's we say in Italian smanettone. I don't know how you say it in English. Or how do you say it? Yeah. Anyway, somebody that likes to use the computer a lot and likes to say, Windows is bad and everything, but I have to use Windows anyway. And then why does he say it's bad? Because he's using Netscape, you see. So he's using one version of Netscape in English. We were talking about a country, not a non-English country, with a Windows 95 upgraded, okay? So we said, well, how many people would be using not Internet Explorer or not Outlook Express or anything, but Netscape, to do this thing? Then Netscape has a good peculiarity. Also, when you navigate, it gives that same line on the logs of the proxy server. Okay, so if you have that thing, that column implemented in the proxy server, it gives you all the navigation of the person with the same line. So I said, how many people would be using this? Let's check it out. So we checked in the proxy service, and we found out that it was, from 60 million people, you could nail down to 15 people in the whole country. I said, wow, that's interesting. So let's see who is using this emailer in the future. So we put that parameter in the parametric interception, and that worked. You know, in one way or the other, you could find the person just that way, just using the machine talking to other machines. You know, when you click, you know, better than me for sure, then when you click on a link, your machine is sending data to the other side saying, well, I have, you know, Internet Explorer this version, so it can send you the correct way to see, you know, whatever you're navigating into. And so that with that it was found, but then there was another problem. That's just for your knowledge, in case we have some law enforcement people here. You know, the law enforcement people said, nah, that's not, it's impossible. You know, say why? I mean, he did use this thing. Yeah, no, that's. You think you can get people with a computer? Say yes. I mean, that's an objective. That's an objective data. You know, datum. He used this thing. You know, and there he used it again. We have 15 people in the whole country doing that. We have a person now communicating these type of things with that mailer. You know, it's not that it must be him, but at least check him out. But what is the difference? In this way, we don't get a person. That's why digimetric and parametric. We get a machine, okay? So we have a computer. That type of parameter just identifies a machine and its configuration. We hypothesize that behind that machine we have a human being, maybe the same human being of before, but maybe there is somebody else. Maybe he gave the computer to somebody else. But even in that case, you go there to this other person, you say, look, you have the machine that did that thing. Did somebody give it to you? You know, normal investigative procedure. So, obviously, after this, you cannot do everything electronically. After this, you need to give it, you know, the investigator should take it and then start doing a normal investigation. You know, check out the person, look who is, but at least you have 1, 2, 3 people to check out. You don't have 50 million, okay? So next slide. So this was a very difficult part of the problem, okay? Because the investigative procedures, so in almost all the Western countries, were based upon name, surname, picture, and phone number, okay? Email, somebody was starting talking about email, but you know, you can have an email saying, I don't know, daffyduck at you know, hotmail.com, and he was the one, you know, that sent the document, but daffyduck is not a person, you know. So legally, I mean, you might laugh about it, but legally it's a problem because Daffy Duck doesn't exist. So who would I intercept Daffy Duck? I don't know. So you have judges saying like that and saying, huh?
It doesn't.
I don't know, maybe not. For sure, it didn't kill the person anyway. So that's that was a big problem. For example, you know, you might, if you have some law enforcement people here, you might find a problem in doing just data interception because, for example, if you put some type of, like we're going to talk about afterwards, the Trojans, you know, inside the computer, legal Trojans, okay, or keyloggers, because you say a person maybe is not sending the document, or if he sends it with PGP or encrypted in some way, you know, or using steganography or whatever. But for sure, when he writes it, it's going to be unclear. And when he memorizes it on his diskette or CD or whatever, it's going to be unclear on his USB key. It's going to be unclear. And when somebody reads it on the other side, it's going to be unclear, okay? Because you don't have PGP decoders in your eyes, you know, so don't read and say public key. And so that's we had to say, okay, the legal code, you know, for almost all the Western countries, European side, it says you can intercept data between telematic and informatic systems. Okay, what's the telematic and informatic system? Whoever wrote the law was an incredible guy, you know, because so. But he left it enough open, so we decided and certified that you know, writing from a keyboard to a computer and visualizing it on a screen is a communication between telematic and informatic system, because you have an electronic signal going from the keyboard to the computer and then to the screen, you know, and you have an interaction. So I said, okay, it's okay putting a keylogger because it's communicating, you know, amongst the telematic and informatic system. That's a type of problem you might have in the judicial procedure. But in the parametric procedure too, because in the parametric procedure, intersection and the digimetric, you need to, the judge needs to issue a warrant. Somebody needs to, otherwise you're not going to have legal rights as a person. Your privacy is going to be destroyed. So there must be somebody saying, okay, we do that and it's legal to do it. Okay, and how do you say a parameter is equal to a person? So we use this thing of the equation. It's an incognita. The incognita is the name and the surname, but we have this other data about the person. They are enough specific for this. Next slide. And okay, so then we got to hang of it, and after a while I said, well, but we can do parametric. Let's do something else. If the person is not, we don't know, we know where he is, but we cannot get to his home and install in his computer a Trojan or whatever. How do we do it? So it was. This is also a legal problem, to do. To send, a Trojan to a person, it's normal. People say, okay, we open a picture, we trick people to open an email. You can't do it legally, okay? But legally, you can enter into the machine, because you can say that's his private home, and if you have a warrant, you can do it. The machine is private, the home is private, so that's the same thing. And but we don't have the technology to do it. So the technology was developed to do it, using all the vulnerabilities of in those systems, for example, because it's the most used system. Somebody has a Mac, we have a problem. That's I can tell you that. But anyway, some kind of good programmer wrote a suite, big suite with a beautiful client, which doesn't do things like back office was doing, like opening and closing the CD thing and turning off and on the screen, but it was doing things that could be used by the police. And then you have another problem. When you inject it and you get a Trojan running, which in most cases is a master, or is installed. The server part of it is a system driver. Okay. Or looks like a system driver. That's once you have it, this thing needs to communicate with you. How do you do it legally? How can you communicate? So you say if the person has a personal firewall, the personal firewall is going to catch it. Or if the person has an antivirus, maybe. So these things are not being detected by antivirus technology so far, at least. But the communication could be detected. For example, me, on my computer, I don't have a personal firewall. I don't have an intrusion detection system like Black Ice or things like that. I have a sniffer. I have Iris 2.0. I don't know if anybody knows about it. I still use it since a few years ago. I have a license, and once in a while I just turn it on and see if my computer is communicating with a weird thing in the outside. So we thought about maybe there is a person enough paranoid like me that uses a sniffer because he doesn't trust Black Ice or anything. If he sees the communication going out, it's not okay. So we need to encrypt it. But you say, okay, if he sends it through the SMTP or the HTTP or the FTP, it's still going to be strange. So he sends it through ICMP. ICMP and the ICMP packets, they are being sent not to a correct destination. The data is encrypted in the data layer of the ICMP packet. It's not sending it to my machine or the police machine, because somebody could see the IP address and do a who is and say, wow, that's the Justice Department. Interesting. So it sends it, for example, to, I don't know, Google. ICMP packet, they go out to Google, to Microsoft, MSN or whatever. Something that will never accept the packet. And you have a probe, on the network which intercepts these packets, memorizes them, and just on the transit, okay, memorizes them, put them in the correct sequence, decodes them, and you have all things that the person is doing on his computer from a keylogger point of view. That's the way it is being done right now. So it's going to be evolving through, as technology evolves. Or as you now guys are going to talk about, well, if I see ICMP packets going back and forth, but you're not in the correct country, so it's okay. Next slide. Okay. So, I think I already covered all these things. Okay, let's go on the other slide. For example, in the injected interception, the Trojan technology is also being used to do we call them environmental interceptions. You know, like you can turn on the nice things that Trojans can do. You know, turn on the microphone and the camera if you have a camera and everything. They're being done just they save the time to the police to go inside the house with the black mask and put a little microphone. You know, I don't know. Usually they put them in the power plug.
Can I just add something? When we saw back orifice first time, it was nice, also sub 7, because you could switch on the microphone and even take a snapshot of the camera webcam. Eventually the guy had attached to the computer, to the Trojan's computer. But now, think about if you have a 3G telephone in your pocket, as I have. I can do, actually already since 3 years, video conferencing through my telephone, because Italy was the first country in Europe adopting such technology. And actually it can be Trojanized. And somebody could switch on the microphone and switch on the webcam, which is embedded in my telephone. The operating system has all the embedded modules. You don't have to invent anything. Once you get in, you can just you have to just tell to the different modules of the operating system, do that, switch on the microphone, use the embedded protocol for the audio-video compression, and then use the TCP/IP protocol, which is already managed by the operating system, to stream it up to the internet. So potentially, each of us will have a bug, an interception bug, in its own pocket. Did you ever thought about that? Because when, sure you do. The guy which was talking about the 3G threats in the telephony yesterday. Of course he does. But did you ever thought that actually your telephone, it's not anymore a telephone, it's a computer server. So what we were talking before about intercepting here and there will be actually applicable to you, just because your telephone will be a computer and just because your telephone will be an IP address. So it will be an extension of the internet. Think about it.
Okay, just so everybody knows, if you want to do this legally, you don't need to do it with a virus on the telephone. You know, that's for the illegal type of uses or the secret services or anything. Legally, you can just do it through the operator. That's already being done through the operator. You know, because in the European countries, you have all the telecom operators. They must give a certain mandatory requirements, you know, to have the license as a telecom operator. One of these requirements is to give the interception. Okay, so you need to allow interception. So when the 3G first came out, the first thing was being a big table saying, okay, how can we intercept it? And they also thought about, you know, a little screen, and they said, well, how if the person doesn't, you know, he's talking about the mother, and then he has a little piece of paper saying, go and kill him, you know, on the. So I say, how do we see that? Okay, so we need to also see that. You cannot imagine all the things that you know, people are thinking about to do that, and how technology evolves. Also, the fantasy of people evolve, and actually they are able to implement it because it is mandatory. Okay, so it's not a question of you cannot do it. It's mandatory to do it. So if I want to intercept you and I know you have a 3G phone, I can do anything on your phone. If it gives the possibility to listen to you, you know, like this is not a 3G phone. You know, everybody knows the BlackBerry. But you can also interact with this telephone. You can totally interact with this telephone. You can interact with all the telephones that have a Symbian operating system and a Windows operating system. So, but to do it now, you need to do something on the phone, okay, either externally or internally. With the 3G, there is no problem because the operator already handles everything.
But I want to add something. If you talk about legal interception, then of course the operator can do everything. But if you are talking about warfare and things nasty people would like to do on the internet, of course they don't have access to the resources in the hand of the telephone operator. That's why they will act actually as a traditional hacker. I gave actually 2 years ago at the DEF CON a demo on. Actually, I had by that time a 3G telephone based on an iPAC 5450, the handheld computer which is based which is mounting the fingerprint reader. So I couldn't switch on my telephone if my fingerprint wasn't swiped through the reader. Something which you hear, you think, you feel, it's very secure. But actually what I demonstrated is that through application level, you could actually break from the internet into my 3G telephone and access completely to the core of the system and steal even the image of my fingerprint. So the platform itself was secure. Actually not, because actually somebody else later demonstrated that this fingerprint reader was actually vulnerable as well. But anyway, the platform might be secure, but through application level you can get into basically anything. And this is actually how nasty people will exploit and will take advantage out of the interception in 3G telecommunication device later on.
Okay, next slide. I think we already covered some points. Okay, so, this is very important. Forensics. So once you get the data, okay, you do injected interception, for example. Once you do that, you interact with the machine, with the target machine. If you ever get your hands on this target machine because you capture the person, you arrest him, or whatever, it is very difficult to use that target machine as a proof. You can only use it as an accessory to the proof because you already interacted with the machine. Maybe you find, if you find bad defensors, lawyers, attorneys, maybe they don't know this. But if you find a good one, he can tell you, oh, you went into my machine, you put this stuff inside my machine. I didn't have it before. How can you, but the date is prior to. You changed the dates. You can do it, So you can only use at that point, so you need to be really sure when you do that, because you can only use this type of, the proofs that you collect only as accessory to other proofs. They are not a proof. They cannot be used as a proof. They are being used, but it's just a gamble. If somebody says, well, I didn't do this thing, demonstrate me that I didn't do this thing. Well, the log says it. I can change this text file. I go in and I change it. You say you put that thing. Say you want to nail me. You have something against me. I don't trust you. You're a bad police officer. So that's a good thing to remember about forensics. Okay. Even with the encase, once you have done an action like that, you can encase whatever you want. But whatever you find in the computer, encase what it is a forensic tool that recovers all the timestamps it and everything. So you can encase whatever you want, but you cannot, once you have interacted with the machine, everything is ruined. So from that point on, you can only use it as an accessory. Okay?
15 minutes like this, I cannot resist. Sorry.
Next slide. Well, it's I just put it because somebody's just going to read the presentation, but everybody knows that, of course, all these things, they have controversies with privacy and things like that. So you need the formal procedures, blah blah blah, all this type of things which you can read and then ask for later. What are you doing? It's been nasty.
We began 15 minutes later. Do we still have this 15 minutes? Okay.
He's so worried about time. I don't know why. So
give him the possibility to talk for 2 days, and he will do it. 48 hours.
I'm a lecturer. I'm not a slideshow presenter. So that's a problem. Next slide. Okay, so this is just for the maniacs of this type of things. All the things that were thought. Once you think about Trojan or an injected tool that you put there, you think about all the things that you must camouflage, you must hide, everything. So you cannot. At the beginning, we said, well, let's use just a tool that exists on the on the internet, so it's cost. It doesn't cost too much, and you have somebody developing it maybe also for free, because he just likes to cooperate with the Justice Department. But it doesn't work like that. You need to have something that you can then use to actually prove that the person is guilty. And then if he is guilty, you need also not to ruin everything with a bad investigation so he doesn't go to prison. He needs to go to prison if he's guilty, okay? We're talking about murders, terrorism, drugs, something big, you know, not things of lower gravity. So all these things were being thought of the tool just to think if he finds it, you know, it ruins the investigation because he becomes aware of the investigation. So it must be able not to look like a virus, it must be able not to communicate like a virus. It must be able to certify the information that he sends, and if you find out that there is something communicating, you must not be able to trace back to the origin, to the Justice Department, for example. Okay, so that's what we were talking about before. And if somebody wants then to talk to have more information, which you can just ask me later. I don't have enough time, he says. So. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so how do you inject it? I said it before, mainly using known vulnerabilities of the system. You need to understand that the people that use this type of thing, you cannot get, for example, me or him or a technician to do this type of job. It must be a police officer. And I don't know in all your countries, but normally police officers they are not very well trained on using. So you must.
They don't know shit.
Must be many police officers. Yes, hi guys. So they need to be helped, to do it easily, but they need to do it. So there is. That's why I said that there is a whole big suite, very user friendly. So you do click, and this is okay. Okay, injected, or we have a problem. I have a problem. So the technician comes and he looks for other vulnerabilities and everything. So that's the thing why. We said this, just you don't have a big technician doing that, but you have a person that some of these people just know how to use the mouse. Okay, they get the printer out of paper and say, the virus doesn't work. It's a printer out of paper. And the document you were printing before. Anyway, so next slide. Okay. So we already covered all these things. Real cases. Okay, real cases. We were talking about the cases of before. We were talking about those cases were political homicides. Okay, political homicides and bombings. So bombs and political homicides with documents and everything. But we also use this type of technology. For example, in Europe, there is a big deal on pedophilia. Okay, pedophilia is a big crime, and for example, that's also a difference between the parametric and the digimetric interception, which is, so it's called in the warrant of the judge. The parametric interception is being used, for example, also to identify, a parameter can be also a website, or an SMTP server. We know, for example, that the person, when he sends the mail, he uses that SMTP server, so we can put as a parameter that SMTP server to find the person, if he is moving, okay? If he's using a wireless connection, if he's using an edge or a GSM, connection around the country or around the cluster of countries which agree with this type of system. So, with the pedophilia is really easy to catch people. I mean, it's so I don't even stay and mention it because there have been a lot of real cases because it is a big crime. With the political murders and terrorism, that's much more difficult. Much more difficult. Okay, next slide. Okay, so. Once you have a sensor network like we talked about before, okay, and you can get the telecom operators of your country to implement this type of technology, which can also be used by them to do intrusion detection, for example. These type of sensors can also do intrusion detection if they get the correct parameters. But once you have a sensor network, you can also the parametric interception is, of course, integrated because all the sensors get the parameter at the same time. But you can also use the sensors to catch the communication from the legal Trojans, okay, that you put inside. So once they travel through the network through an unknown destination, which can never be traced back, or if it gets traced back, it doesn't get to anything. These packets are being cached through these sensors. So that's how they interoperate. And okay, so IP is being masked, as I said before. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that's what I was talking about before. The Trojans that we have right now, for example, let's talk about the encryption. Okay, so the communication is not being encrypted, okay, and they cannot self-destruct in case the Trojan is found. Okay, or in case, for example, it becomes critical that it doesn't appear, or that the computer doesn't communicate anymore. So that's why they've been rewritten and written just to do investigative procedures. One thing that I maybe mentioned before, but I don't remember, is about encryption. Okay, so one big problem about interception is when you get encrypted and compressed communications, because they don't, whatever parameter you put, they don't read it. So you need to be able, the sensors are actually able to, when they find a parameter, okay, to get all the, all the communications are being bufferized for a certain amount of gigabytes, and they can trace back all the packets prior, coming from that IP address, and put them together, so you get the prior thing. You don't just get the packet, the single packet of the parameter. Then from there on, the sensor can automatically start to intercept a certain target if you tell him before to do it. Okay, if you're really sure that parameter is really specific. But when you have encryption, you cannot do anything. The only thing that is unencrypted is the header and your email address, and the things that must be not encrypted, otherwise you cannot communicate. So that's why that's also one of the reasons why we got Trojans and injected interception, because the only place where you can get an encrypted communication, or enough data to decrypt communications from a point, is at the origin and at the end. Okay, so in this case, when you get a correct parameter, and if you have an encrypted communication, you can get it from a digimetric interception. You then need to, if you want to read whatever he writes, you need to, Trojanize the machine and try to get the PGP public and private key, okay, and the password through the keylogger. So from there on, you can just read everything, or you can just read these documents while he writes them on the computer from the keylogger. Next slide. Okay, so this is Roberto.
3 minutes, I will finish. They're blinking. Next slide. I define myself an observer. Who reads Zone H knows very well that I never take any position judging this or that. I report. But my position should be neutral. And in a neutral way, in the last 3-4 years, I started to observe what is going on. For most of the people, cyber terrorists are the script kiddies who are defacing the governmental server, fuck Bush, fuck Sharon, how many? Thousands. Actually, we saw a lot of activities like this. Related, for example, to the dispute between India and Pakistan, the Kashmir territory. Or, next slide, related to the war against Iraq. Mostly, United States was actually attacked. And actually, Brazil is always ready to attack the United States. This is a mystery for me. I have to still to discover why. But next, the dispute between USA and China related to the spy plane when landed and was taken over by the Chinese. At that time, almost the same time, Code Red was released, and somebody believes that actually was a Chinese move to damage the Western servers. Next. The Palestine-Israel related cyber fight, which is happening right now. I know a lot of the faces. I'm talking with everybody. I know a lot of defacers who are defacing American servers and vice versa. Everything related to the dispute between Palestine and Israel. Next. No global. Whenever a G8 meeting is being held at whatever city among the G8 countries, a lot of cyber protest is going on. A lot of attacks, SIM floods against the servers belonging to one of these G8 countries. Of course, there are people who hate the G8 meeting, the G8 Congress, and they do what they can do. If they are hackers or crackers, they start to do things over the internet. But, next. If you put all of this together, you see actually it is a big mess. Wherever you are, there is always a good reason for somebody to hit your server. And this is clear to my point of view now. Next.
Nobody is doing anything from Africa.
From the moon as well. Now, cyber attacks are convenient because you can be sitting in your living room and do whatever you want, and nobody can trace you if you are not enough smart. Or if you are attacking an opponent country, nobody will actually even hunt you down. I know hackers, American hackers, who were hacking Chinese servers. The FBI came and they were just pulling the ears like that, saying, "Bad boy, don't do it again. Take $5,000 or take a gold medal." But if you're an American and you hack an American server, the Bush administrator said, "Ooh, you hacked and defaced a server. 15 years of serving in a prison because you are the same as a cyber terrorist." This is what the American code today is actually saying. Next. The last slide. Click. But beside the script kiddies, actually I was digging myself a little bit during the last 3 years. And what I discovered is that there is a lot of, keep clicking until it goes to, a lot of activity, especially from Pakistan. I'm not here to judge, I'm just reporting. Command and control centers of several activities related to attacks actually can be tracked down to Pakistan. Some news actually appeared public, they went public, but believe me, Pakistan is very much specialized in taking advantage of the internet for whatever it is their cause. I'm not here to judge. There is a lot of information gathering from the internet on enemy's target, a lot of activity getting possible vulnerable points from the Western servers. There is activity of media management. Most of the so-called terrorist executions, abduction of hostages, after 10 minutes you can find a picture or the streaming video on the internet. You cannot do this if you are in the middle of a desert, having only your camel, or, I mean, there must be kind of organization, I believe. I don't know how it is structured, but I see it, and you can see it as well. Hostage gets killed, 10 minutes after or half an hour after, somebody has the video. If you stream it through the Thuraya telephone, satellite telephones, it's really easily traceable. I don't think it's done in that way. It's organized in a different way. It's not my job, of course, to discover how. But diffusion of propaganda, if you count the number of websites which are used to spread the propaganda message, it's enormous. You don't even have enough time to count them. They appear, disappear, and so on. But what I saw, actually, it is a lot of tax-free money raising and laundering. Today, a lot of fights around the world are conducted, physical fights, getting money from the internet. A lot of unsuspectable websites, I'm not here to tell you which ones, but if you dig a little bit on the internet, you can discover yourself, are actually used, for example, to collect from the same territory of the United States money which are tax-free, which goes directly to fund terrorist activity. So, okay, it's not yet like in the movie, but things are moving in the direction where the internet will be more and more used also to attacks in unconventional way. This is why parametric and digimetric interception, it's important to conduct the future wars between good and bad guys. I think we finished the time, and I don't think we have enough time for questions and answers, but do you have any question? We can have 2 or 3 questions.
Wow.
Good. The cameraman? Do you have any question? Did I move too much? Was I good? Prozac. Okay. Thank you very much.